Internationally renowned artist Frank Bowling has spent the past 6 decades experimenting with paint and colour, defying categorization with vast abstract works inspired by his Guyanese heritage.
One of the things that I found is that in order for people to feel comfortable, they have to put you in a box, right? And I instinctively can't bear that, I want to jump out of the box immediately.
Having struggled for recognition for much of his long career, in 2005, Frank became the first black artist to be elected to the Royal Academy of Arts, and his work is finally being recognised with a major retrospective at Tate Britain.
Pretty sure somebody should ask a question or something, don't you? I mean, do I have to ad-lib?
Night after night, I have these dreams about bright light and then clouding over and then the rainbow. It's amazing. I feel as a painting, it's a signal for me to keep going by instinct. I mean, I always go for red, yellow, and blue, and then secondaries and tints. I mean, I want the energy of the color to come and baste me with warmth and relax and sort of dream in it or whatever. But I like all this Chinese fabric made in Africa. The dress was made in Africa.
These paintings, they're a bit like diaries for you, aren't they? Your stories are all wrapped up in every single one of them.
I think so, because they are things that, I conjure up, unreal, I don't have to have a story to relate with the things actually sort of come around to being that by themselves. And that for me is the joy of sort of creativity.
It's this idea of layering time, layering history on the very surface of the canvas, which he does incredibly in these paintings. They have an archaeological feel to them. They're paintings that you have to stand with for a long time, and you constantly see and discover things on the surface of the canvas.
I often think that Frank, and particularly his generation, have had to face a really harsh conundrum about how they've been framed and how they wish to frame themselves. Is he a British artist? Is he a black artist? Is he Caribbean stroke South American artist? He's got to be one or another. But of course, he's all of those things.
I was born on the 26th of February, 1934, at Bartica, Essequibo, Guyana. I would think that maybe because when I opened my eyes at 5 a.m. on the day I was born, I saw the Western Hemisphere, the rivers, the sky above. That had lodged in my physical self a need to be out there, to be free and expressive. My mother was this incredible individual who turned her hand at anything. She didn't go to high school. But her training was as a dressmaker and seamstress, and she was a whiz at embroidery. She was the only one in the town who could make saris, what the Indians, the colorful embroidery and stuff. And
Does your creativity come from her?
Yes, I think. My father, he always was beating me up for the slightest infringement, and that prompted me to try and run away from home, and I kept running away from home. It was only in my teenage years that I put a stop to it by threatening to kill him.
You've said before that you always knew that you had to leave Guyana and come to London. Why was that?
The full education that one hankered after was unavailable in Guyana. You left high school and then you went to work. The whole thing about art culture and visual arts especially was non-existent. Guyana was full of just poor people.
Frank was raised in a quite strict family with very traditional values and rules, and he always had a very strong desire to break out of this very constrictive environment, but also to gain advanced education, which he was unable to achieve in Guyana. So coming to London in 1953 felt very natural. It was a chance of coming to a big metropolis.
Frank got into the Royal College at the end of the 50s with very little training. For him to even get into it with his limited knowledge of art, his mere enthusiasm, his raw talent that hadn't been developed, is a fantastic achievement. He found the art world a haven from the everyday racism which he encountered in London society.
I seemed to have some sort of light that people gravitated to, and I lived on the warmth and kindness of community. I never felt out of place.
I think Frank, as a young man, was probably quite charming on one level and quite boisterous. I say charming in that I think a lot of ladies liked him. And I think also a lot of his male peers liked the kinds of conversations that they could have with him. He was very much at the centre of what was happening in London in the 1960s in the art scene.
You were hanging out with the likes of David Hockney. Tell us about that. Was there camaraderie or competition?
David was the same year as me, and he loved cricket and poetry, and Mahatma Gandhi came to me gradually that David was not interested in girls, and he's homosexual, even though when we traveled north, we shared the same bed. But what I liked about David was his engaging way of making one feel relaxed and sort of enjoying his company.
He knew David Hockney, he knew Kittai, these famous names who to become glamorous figures in the 60s. His own art was not that, though. His own art was a kind of expressive realism. Mirrors a very visually complex and conceptually rich work. There's a story running through it, or it seems like a story. A man crouching at the top, a man coming down the stairs. You know it is Frank, so it's a reflection of Frank's life. Maybe it's his anxiety. Who am I? I'm a black painter. Here's my black face. Rather beautiful. You can tell that it's him as a young man. He doesn't know, with all his talent, with all the willingness of people to help him, if he's really going to get anywhere. Can he stand out? Can he make a figure of himself?
Soon after graduating, Frank is included in some important exhibitions, including the Gabrowski Gallery. His work is acquired by the Arts Council. And yet, in the mid-60s, there is a sense that his work is not included in some key group exhibitions.
Whereas the others, you mentioned David, got full-time jobs teaching. Nobody offered me any teaching. And I wanted proper representation, which seemed to be unavailable to me, whereas some of the others got proper galleries.
If we ask ourselves honestly, would the establishment in Britain, including the art establishment, being prejudiced against the work of a young artist whose skin happened to be of a darker color? I think undoubtedly the answer is yes.
I think Frank left London for New York in 1966 because he was struggling here in the UK. There were very hard and fast ideas about who could be an artist and who could be a great artist, and he didn't match that image.
I got a shock when excitement of being a young artist, young British artist. I mean, I suddenly became a black artist, and I resented that. And it continued for another couple of years. And every time I tried to get a decent gallery to represent my work, I came a cropper. So that's what made me leave London to go to New York.
Frank had been to New York a few times since leaving art school on visits as a sort of wide-eyed young artist, knowing that something very important had happened there in post-war art, that somehow America was where art was at.
I moved into the Hotel Chelsea, and that was the center of all the madness and excitement in New York at the time. And, I just felt I was swimming in the warm atmosphere of creativity.
In 1971, Frank had his first solo exhibition at the Whitney Museum in New York. And there he exhibited his map paintings, which were extraordinary, massive canvases, which had the outline of South America, sometimes Guyana. Paintings like Palimpsest 1, which also included stencils of his mother's shop in Guyana.
They seem to be paintings that try to connect the Americas with Europe, with what's called the transatlantic triangle, so the relationship also to Africa. He's trying to map out these various spaces that have formed what could be called a kind of modern black identity.
Frank very quickly became established in New York as not only a painter, but also a sort of thinker, a commentator, an art writer. He wrote reviews in art magazines, he wrote polemical articles in art magazines, he organised exhibitions.
New York was a terribly exciting time for you, weren't it? And it gave you the energy you needed to kind of revive the work you wanted to do. But you were critical of black art, the type of black art that was being produced.
Yes, it was just locked into what photography was doing even better. And I felt, to stay in that stagnant area was not black. It couldn't be, even though it was done by blacks.
When Frank arrived in New York, there was a very strong and vibrant black art scene there. But most of it was primarily quite figurative, very representational, very much about making social and political statements. And he probably felt as if he was slightly at odds with what was happening amongst African American artists and what he was doing, which was very much about the terms around painting and abstraction.
In the early 70s, around 1973, when Frank very much is wanting to push the way he's making painting, in a way try to paint as if the work is painting itself. He was more and more wanting to explore the pure quality of color, and he achieved this by constructing these incredible tilting platforms that allowed him to pour paint from heights of up to 2 meters, layer over layer, creating these beautiful vertical descending pours of different colors of paint.
I narrowed down the shape built on what I understood was classical geometry, tall and thin, or square or whatever, and let the paint run. Lo and behold, people noticed, and I'm starting to make a fuss about it. Lift it up, yeah. Okay, so it's right here in front of me. Okay, give me the mixtures of the red, yellow, and green. If you put primary colors in the middle of the carrier that you're working on and find that red and green and blue, and you let it go, right? You pour it, and when the thing starts moving without you're making any attempt to control it. I just put it off the table slightly. I'm hooked on the incredible, elusive, surprising effects from just letting it go.
Just keep pulling it, yeah?
You pull it down, just let it down.
All right, and it's...
I don't just as an easily designed to copy nature. You put the canvas on the floor and let it bleed, walk in it, jiggle it around and force it to reveal the charge you get out of the material and color and structure. Let it run, higher than that.
In the mid-1970s, Frank lost his studio in New York and also very much had the desire to reconnect more with his 3 children who were growing up, or they were by then teenagers. So coming back to London in a way was a sort of the result of both practical constraints and a desire to be closer to his family.
For him, it was a very difficult time. He was back from New York in an art world where painting was considered an absolute anachronism. Conceptual art was the thing. And one of the very reasons for its existence was to destroy painting. So he was totally up against it, being such a consummate painter and being so joyously and passionately involved with painting. So he had very, very lean times. He never stopped working, and his work developed in the most marvelous ways between the 70s and right up until the 90s, constantly soaring with new inventions and new ideas. The subject becomes paint itself.
The material was dominant, and the narrative would have to follow what the material coughed up. Everything was boxed in, so to speak, the edges dominated, so that the electric charge registered on the central nervous system would tremble at the edge and, lift the whole thing almost off the wall.
And those are the paintings that are absolutely physically massive, visually stupendous, incredibly rich in the thick acrylic gunky gook, gloops of it, great vats of thick, buttery-like, transparent acrylic medium that colour is suspended in and then applied onto canvas with great big knives and spatulas and scratchy things and moved around.
Frank basically was embedding a variety of materials into the substrate or the support of the canvas, and then kind of painting on top of it, and other things would kind of emerge through this layering process.
In the late 1980s, Frank began a series called The Great Thames, which really can be seen as part of a history and tradition of the English sublime. Except in this case, Frank focused on the river, which is the artery of the city, and in which he also brought to the surface of the canvas debris, which he found on the banks of the river.
He very much saw this as a challenge to try and render this incredible beauty of this light. We can very much see in the way the gel is applied nearly a sense of the rippling effect of the light on the water. What is also interesting is that in 1989, as he was completing these paintings, he traveled back to Guyana. And there was a sort of moment of reckoning when he realized that the light he had been trying to paint in his pictures is actually this light of Guyana.
Let me take you back to Guyana for a bit. Did you feel you were constantly fighting this connection or assumption by people that, oh, Frank must be into colour because he's from the Caribbean?
Yes, right, yes, he must, yeah. At first I went back to confirm what people were heaping on me. I didn't want to go back, but I felt that I had to.
I know you went back twice, once with your son. Did your relationship with it change, and did you acknowledge its impact on your work and your life?
When I went there with my son afterwards, I said to him, look out there, does what you'll see remind you of my work? And he said, yes.
He starts to make paintings with titles that refer to his homeland. He refers to the light of those places. You see in the paintings, if you scrunch up your eyes, they're very landscapey. There's a mixture of the light of the West, the light of the Thames, and sudden disjunctions where you feel that you're in a jungle.
In the 1980s, late 1980s, early 90s, although Frank's work appeared in a number of exhibitions, Frank was not as prominent as I believe his work deserved. And in lots of ways, I think that was a function of two things. It was a result of prejudice and racism within the British art world. The second problem, I think, was that people didn't really know how to situate the work. They didn't know how to write or talk about the work because it draws from a number of different traditions and experiences and therefore can't be pigeonholed within a simplistic notion of Britishness or a simplistic notion of blackness or Caribbeanness. It defies those categories in a way. That's one of the ways that makes it absolutely innovative and great.
Okay, just over the edge.
Yeah.
A very important factor defines the work of certainly the last 10 years, and that is physical frailty.
And just pick it up there and then let this red move. Keep going. It's moving, yeah, okay. Gradually, most of the heavy work is being done by others. I just sit there or shout and beg and plead. I encourage them to let loose like I would have done.
Pick up this.
Yeah, pick it up, hold it high. Okay, lovely, good, good, good. It's just over the edge there.
I just kind of do whatever he says, really. And that can be from anything from cutting up some canvas, pouring water all over things.
Turn around on the long side. Just pick it up on the long side, please.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Lifting and dripping and spilling and pouring and sliding and slipping and everything is just happening. Here's some gold if you want that.
Just flick it on the wet space, especially that empty white space there,
Yeah.
okay? And come inside now.
Now this?
Yeah, that's good.
I'm just there to be an extra tool in his toolbox. I'm an extension of his hands and feet and extra muscle to push things around.
Let it go over the edge, Freddie. Higher than that.
Higher than that? Okay.
Yeah. Come around here. Rachel, just come around here a bit. Okay.
It's not going over the edge.
No, I want it over the edge. Rachel, just with him and...
Should we... Oh, it's running over this side.
It's all right, it doesn't matter. Let it run over the edge there, the narrow end. Good, that's enough, okay? Pull it back now, lay it back on the table.
He's marshalling all those forces, all that different range of materials and all those friends and helpers, and creating these great operatic works that mix all his previous styles, all his previous approaches, and have a lot of tokens of imagery, lots of signs of reality, bits of fabric friends have sent back from Africa, all arranged in these marvelous shimmering patterns, sometimes like 5 meters across.
I think in these last 20 years, there's been another turn and another kind of playfulness, and in fact, a kind of letting go of whatever rules may have been kind of set up. He refers to art's history, he refers to his contemporaries in art, and he plays between the past and the present, and also the future to a certain extent.
You're an internationally renowned artist now. You have the success, you know. You choose to paint every single day when you could, quite frankly, put your feet up. What is it that painting still gives you?
Well, I get a buzz out of it. It gives you that sort of marvelous wholeness or freedom that you feel that you're being lifted off your feet and, floating. I don't feel this compulsion to take credit. Once one has shown that there's a way through, others will follow.
This state retrospective is the first occasion to showcase Frank's entire oeuvre over 60 years. I think it's an opportunity to see the incredible changes and evolution into his practice.
Yep, good. Where would you like to go look at first?
For references, there's one of my sons and my children. It's up there.
Up there?
Yeah. Look at the light in the pictures. I can't believe it. I haven't seen this for so long. And now I'm here. I thought, well, how did I manage to do that?
Now, recognition, Frank, was so hard won. When you look around, has it been worth it?
I haven't thought about that, but my instinct is to say yes.
You've always said you wanted that big exhibition. Is this it?
No, this is a small version of the big exhibition I want.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Frank Bowling.
It's quite inspiring, really, because you can see this person has fought all his life for what he wanted to do, and he knows how he wants to get it, and that's just a great way to live.
Frank draws on the specificity of his history and experience as a black man from Guyana in order to create monumental paintings, universal works which communicate to everyone.
Identity politics doesn't really matter in his art. His life matters, it's very important where he has come from, but his art is powerful because of the power of art.
There's nothing quite like being in front of Frank's works to think, wow. So to have a collection of those works here at Tate Britain, and to have that arc of his career here, where it began, we've been waiting. We've been waiting for this.
No wonder your paintings carry the genes of rivers, born as you were in a land of many waters. No wonder your veins can't escape their openness. Whether the unscrolling Thames or mighty mapping Essequibo, the silken memory goes deep within your childhood bones. As you translate for us their liquid language in the ebb and flowing drama of your own color instinct,